Hey, White Sox fans, guess what? We are back with the Dish Deluxe. If you're not hip, if you're not on top of this, if you haven't caught the first three, well, let me tell you, the Dish is a reference to our Today in White Sox History, which Mark Liptak puts together for us. I try and pitch in a little bit. Every single day we have something on site talking about White Sox history. Oftentimes, oh boy, around July and August, the items get really, really thick and the stories are very long. We try and add something to it every single year. It might be video, it might be a new item. Hey, Sox history is rich, 123 years. Some of it's actually good. So, we every day look forward to read, and we are trying to supplement it with these deluxe podcasts, not just an almanac of the day, but actually talking to folks who are at games or have really rich memories of games, or for those of us who weren't alive in 1907, we can just talk about what we know about those games. However, we're not going back that far. We're not even close to going back that far, because we have gotten into the time machine. We have just soared back only 2 years. Somehow we ended up in Iowa. Go figure. I don't know how any of us ever end up there, but we're in Iowa. It is August 12th, 2021, a very, very different time in Chicago White Sox history. And of course, Melissa and I at least will be passing on our condolences to the franchise for that, because wow, it couldn't be more 180 degrees from where they were then. But we'll talk a little bit about the spirit of the White Sox at the time. But welcoming in, again, if you're tuning in or listening thinking, wait, when did this become a Cubs podcast? Well, hey, listen, I'm sorry. We just got to go where the numbers are. It is, of course, Shaun Bollenbach joining us from the north side and the Iowa side of White Sox history. And, well, you know her. It's Melissa Sage-Bollenbach. She is on 80% of these podcasts. So, although debuting on the History Podcast. So welcome to you both, and thank you for joining me on our fourth History Podcast.
We're excited to be here, especially talking about this. This is like one of my favorite things to talk about. So.
Which is why I picked you, which is why we're running this out quick. Listen, while I have people who are at these games, while they're still with us, I want to be able to talk. It's like, gee, should you be talking about this just 2 years ago? Man, it's not exactly, we're not having to page through the history. But hey, listen, I want to get Melissa, and geez, if it's a package deal with Shaun, I want to get them as soon as possible. So yes, we've just unveiled this. We're now about 6 weeks into the process of these history podcasts, and let's just strike it while we can. I'm sure some folks are going to be talking to me about like some October playoff game where Leury Garcia hit a home run or something, like in another month or two. So stay tuned. I'm sure you're all on the edge of your seat to talk about the one playoff victory the White Sox have had in the last 30 or 40 years. But we are talking about a really nice highlight, a strange invention by Major League Baseball, somewhat, you could argue, contrived. Obviously, it's connected to a movie, which people have mixed feelings about. So despite an origin that's odd and a game that I guess they're continuing, they're playing one in 2023 too. Of course, the Cubs got the next one. They're playing one this year too, right? I should know this, but are they still doing this?
No. So this year they are doing construction at the Field of Dreams. Okay. Once Frank Thomas took part ownership, right. They're doing, my understanding is they're enhancing the fields so that they can have tournaments and stuff of young kids and more people there and things like that. So, leave it to Big Frank to do some cool things with it. And so they have to take a year off, but I believe that it is going to happen next year as long as they get all their construction. But I haven't heard who's going to do it.
Let's be honest. At some point, that eugenics money does run out. So, hey, you got to look for new cash streams. I got it. Big Frank. We love you. We love you. All right. Make it good. Okay. So, all right. Even more reason then to talk about 2 years ago and the greatest game any of us have ever witnessed, except there's probably a few other ones. But in Melissa's case, I don't know. We're going to talk a little bit about where this game ranks, but we'll get to that. All right. So 2 years ago, more than 2 years, I don't know, about 2.5 years ago, maybe words starts coming out. I don't know how much advance they gave for this, but tell me just the origin of how you even got wind of this game, and then how quickly that became, well, we are going to this game.
Well, so if my old lady memory recalls, 2020 was when they were supposed to play the first one.
Okay. Yeah.
But then COVID obviously axed it. So then they said, okay, well, we're gonna postpone it to 2021. And of course, I'm like, oh, that'd be such a cool thing to go to. But realistically, I mean, 8,000, a little over 8,000 seats. Like there's absolutely no, like way harder to get than postseason tickets. Like there's absolutely no way. So, you know, I didn't really like look into it too much because I was like, there's no hope. I'm not going to get to go.
You did the eBay already.
So then the Sox had the thing where you could enter into a drawing, and I don't know when that was, like April or May or something.
Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 months before. And I'm like, shot in the dark. Why not? So throw my name in there, and then didn't hear anything. So of course I'm like, of course it, you know, didn't win anything. That's my, I get those lotto tickets. But so then I'm sitting at a pool a week before the game, and my phone rings, and it's a 312 area code. And I was just like, I mean, I typically wouldn't answer those calls. And I'm like, it's gonna be scammer or whatever. But I answer it, and he's like, "Hey, is this Melissa? This is, you know, so and so from the White Sox. Hey, you entered to get Field of Dreams tickets. Would you be interested in going to the game?" And I was like, "What?" Like I thought it was like a joke. Like I'm with my girlfriends at the pool, and I'm like looking at my phone because I have it on speakerphone. And he's like, "Yeah, you know," it's like, "Now the downside is it's like $400 a ticket, but you know that gets you into the game." And he's like, "You know, so if you want them, they're yours." And I was like, he's like, "But I need to know now." Like I couldn't be like, "Hey, can I call you back?" Or can I talk to my husband about spending $800
to go to cornfield?
So I'm
but
like,
didn't he say a lot of people had turned it down?
so he's like, he's like, you wouldn't believe it, because I like was in such shock. I think he was like, this woman's like way more excited than anybody else I've talked to. And he's like, if you can believe it, he's like, I've had so many people turn me down because of the price. And I was like,
I think the price, and it was during the week.
Yeah, because it was like a Thursday. Yeah, it was a Thursday.
Deal, I think.
Yeah. So I was like, yep, sign me up. So I gave him my credit card. I hung up. I told my girlfriends what I just did. I'm like, I got to text Shaun. I just spent $800 on tickets.
Remember what I said when you got back home?
Go ahead.
She gets back home, and I said, "Oh yeah, that game. Have you seen what those tickets are going for?" Online, they were going for like $2,000-$3,000.
Wow.
Some of them. I mean, our seats are more in the $1,500-$2,000 range, but still they're going for a mile. And Melissa, I said, "You know, we could sell those." And Melissa looks at me and goes, "You could sell yours, but I'm going with mine."
And I was like, I will drive myself to the middle of nowhere, Iowa. I will drive myself home in the middle of the night if I have to go by myself, but I'm not selling my ticket. So with or without you, I'm going.
It's like I got good news and I got bad news. The good news, or the bad news is, yes, I spent $800 on tickets. The good news is you get to come with me.
Right, exactly. And it's history. And it's the first ever Major League Baseball game played in the state of Iowa. You know, so as a couple who likes to do our baseball, you know, around the country kind of thing, it was be a neat opportunity. So I sold him on it.
To give an idea of the needle in the haystack, you know, obviously, cost aside, obviously that is prohibitive. It wasn't a free ticket. That would have been even a quicker yes. But I mean, we're talking about, what was it? Something around like 8,000 fans. I mean, basically, what was your odds even to get a ticket through the White Sox? Because obviously the White Sox, even though it was a home game, they didn't have all the tickets to sell. They're splitting with the Yankees and MLB. So, I mean, how do you even recall what the pool of tickets even was for like the White Sox base? I
mean, it had to be not a lot, because like you said, I mean, there was tons of MLB people there. You know, it was like they must have had a huge chunk of tickets. And then, the Yankees, obviously. And then they also had so many for Iowa people. So that was another thing. It was like they had a raffle for people who lived in Iowa, because I had my friend who lives in Iowa enter for me. I was like, she could care less about baseball. So
playing the angles.
And so, so there was even a certain amount of tickets that were only for Iowa people. So unless you wanted to go on, you know, StubHub or whatever and pay several $1,000s, I would think it pretty needle in a haystack. So.
But we met a lot of people that paid a couple $1,000.
Yeah, we sure did.
Wow. Yeah, paid like the going rate.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that you weren't so eager to get to the game, Melissa, that you actually made the effort to make friends. Okay, so you entered yourself. You had your friend in Iowa try to enter for you, but you weren't making friends with Yankees fans to try and get tickets. So I mean, there's a limit. That's good. It's reassuring because we can bond together slightly in I think maybe all three of us in our hatred of the Yankees or disdain for them. Okay, so you do get there. So let's I guess fast forward to, I guess, unless there's a crazy story en route, arriving. Obviously the whole thing is such a spectacle that you're like walking through the corn. I mean, it is got a bit of an amusement park aspect to it, because I know there's like the corn to walk through and the players and the stand-ups in the corn, a lot of photo ops of which we've seen, at least some of yours, Melissa. So the idea that it had a little bit of almost a carnival atmosphere, I assume.
Yeah,
it was even a carnival atmosphere before you got to the game, because there's only 2-lane roads to get there and kind of 2 sides to get to the parking lot. And so when you're driving there, everybody was backed up because we wanted to get there early before the parking would open, which was 2 big cornfields, was basically the parking lot. But while you're driving there, you have everybody that lives there on those farms having a party outside
in their driveways,
in their driveway, in their front yard,
and
waving at all the cars.
Wow.
So it's just kind of just what is going
honking,
on here?
Yeah, or like honking horns and like shaking noisemakers and stuff. So it was like, and I mean, because it was in the middle of nowhere, like we had to drive there and drive back in the same night because you couldn't stay. I mean, everything had been booked probably for months and months and months. Sure. So it was like in the middle of nowhere, people, cooking out in their driveways. And it was kind of funny.
But I think we were there, 3-4 hours before the game, something like that. This is when they opened so we were right there when they opened the tickets or let you in, and we were one of the first ones in. So
wow, that's a long day. Well, I hate to have to explain to you guys went to the game. Hate to have to explain this to you, but that's just giving you the authentic movie experience of the cars. I mean, granted, it wasn't pitch black, but the cars having to get backed up into the field. I mean, they were determined to deliver that to you, and it sounds like you got it. It sounds like that was a bit of a, especially at the start, before the game, long before the game begins. That's sort of trying. It's always a bummer, like when I'd go to a Sox game and traffic was stacked up, even like on the Eden to get the Eden Spur. You're like, geez, do I really want to go to this game? So the fact that you can see Iowa at the point where you're starting to already get stacked up. That's a test of your heart. It's a test of your heart and your willingness. So kudos to you for getting there and being one of the first in. So describe a little bit more. I guess once you get in there, what was there to see? I mean, obviously you are in the middle of nowhere, so it's not gonna be too dynamic, but it does seem like there was at least not just arrows pointing you to the bleachers so you can sit on a hard bleacher for 4 hours of the game starts.
Yeah.
When you first go in, they basically have you enter where the Field of Dreams baseball field is for the movie. And then they have a big 2-tiered beer truck set up for people if they want to have beer, like a bar there. They have concessions there. They have, selling souvenirs. But they have the field right there first. And then to get to the field, you'd walk through the corn to get to the field. And then once you walk through the corn, then they have a path that glides you only one way through left field to get to the bleachers. But most people kind of were having fun with all the attractions on the field. And we were lucky. We actually just happened to go to the Field of Dreams the year before.
During COVID, we were like, well, this would be a fun thing to do because everything's outside.
We threw our baseballs and brought our gloves and did all that, which we were happy because then we didn't lug those around, where I would say 80% of the people there brought their gloves, brought their baseballs. And the first thing they did was they're playing catch on the field. They did have the old timers dressed up in the Sox uniforms that go around and play baseball.
The ghosts, they call them.
So they were walking around taking pictures with people and talking with people, but that field was full of people playing catch, and it was all older people.
Yeah.
There was hardly any kids there because it was during school time.
And it was expensive.
But I mean, you have, the 30, 40-year-olds playing catch with their dad that's 60 or 50. It was just kind of very interesting. that.
Yeah, and they had like bags, like, bags set up so people could play bags in addition to, throwing the ball around. And they had like special concessions that they were just offering there. It was like, they had like the apple pie hot dog thing. I can't remember. It was like some famous chef made it.
Right.
And, so they had like different, I guess, like unique experiences, hot dog, apple pie kind of thing. The concessions were like a big deal too, the merchandise, because you could only get some things at the Field of Dreams. So
why don't you tell your experience getting merchandise?
So that was my first goal. I was like, I gotta go because I gotta get my merch first. I gotta get my jersey. Sure. So, and the lines were like crazy long. So I'm so glad we did that first and got it out of the way. But so this miserable line to get merchandise, and it's the middle of Iowa. And so people are using their credit cards. And so it's taking forever because the internet is like,
the credit card.
So so I'm making friends with people in line, and we're just talking about stuff. And like all of a sudden these people come and they like cut in front of the line, and everybody's like, boo, and like literally like almost like throwing things at these people. But they're like dressed to the nines and like just super fancy looking. And then because it got so out of hand, a security guard came over and was like, yeah, that's the Steinbrenner family, so you're going to want to stop doing that. So yeah, it was so, but it was
and
like,
you said they bought like all that stuff
they bought, well, they didn't buy it, they were given it. And so like they're walking away with like arms like overlapped of merchandise and stuff like that. It was like, really, like you couldn't get that ahead of time. You're the Steinbrenners, for goodness sake. So yeah, so that was just kind of a funny thing that happened when I was waiting for my cool. The only Yoan Moncada was the only player they had of all people.
Well, I mean, it could have been weirder, I suppose. I mean, it really could have been the bottom of the bottom of the barrel. I like that story manages to drag the Yankees. As often as we can just get off the rails and Steinbrenners.
Yeah.
You didn't see Jerry trying to get any souvenirs,
no, I didn't see any. No, didn't see any Ryan.
He's smart enough to know what you said, Melissa. I don't need to do this. My whole family can get the stuff. Probably why there was only Yoan Moncada uniforms, because all the good stuff went to those guys. Yeah. I mean, come on, use your brain here. Okay, Steinbrenners. So the atmosphere of the actual field and the scene, of course, unique because you really are. I mean, it's like you're at a minor league game, maybe even like a big high school game, really. So I mean, that in itself also, and in that you hadn't had a more modern Melissa minors experience, because I think that had come after Field of Dreams. So maybe a spring training type of experience or a minor league experience. I mean, the field itself, is very different than what you're used to.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it felt it felt like an old Comiskey type of atmosphere, like the stadium. Well, they used the dimensions to build the park itself, but like, because they had the old timey scoreboard and things like that, but it was just like, so like intimate that it took me back to that feeling of being at Old Comiskey, because it was such an intimate type of stadium. But it was like so small because there was no like overhang, I mean, everything is just like wide open spaces and things like that. So to me, it felt extremely intimate. Like we have a single A team here in Peoria for the Cardinals, and like, that stadium is way bigger and feels way more modern.
Yeah, they basically had bleachers, what I would say about 20, 30 rows behind all the way down to the where first base is all the bleachers went on that way. And then that stretched around to the end of the third base dugout. And then third base all the way to left field was a lot more bleachers. And I would say kind of where our seats were and kind of where they had the general public. I think all the nice seats were in that, in between the bases.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any bleachers in right field because they used that whole right field for where the players came in and out.
And all the media.
And the media and different things. So they kept all of us in left field and to walk around that way. So we're all hanging out there.
And so, all right, the the game, are there any glitches or any weird moments as the game is starting to ramp up where there's, I don't know, any kind of like delay or I don't know, celebrity sighting, just anything before the game even starts going that is, is distracting, or were there any odd, stories there with people you're seeing maybe on the field? Or
well, MLB had, so in the area where the actual movie was shot, MLB had a big stage set up, and that's where they were interviewing people. And so Kevin Costner was there. And so I was right up against it. I mean, I can almost reach out and touch Kevin Costner. So that was really cool. So they had like some players, coming through, but the only one we like went up and kind of watched them film was the Kevin Costner one. So that was really cool because you don't really ever see two big time movie guy at baseball games like that.
Plus we went and checked out the field, and then we came back to our field, and who did we run into that you recognized?
Yeah. Ron Kittle. We ran into Ron Kittle in the corn.
And then because somebody else was getting
they were trying to like take a selfie, and I was like, hey, they're trying to take a selfie with Ron Kittle. So I went over there. I'm like, hey, I'll take a picture for you. And so I took a picture for them, and then I'm like, hey, will you take a picture of them?
And then after our picture, he kind of looked around. I was like, I need to get out of here.
Like, I need to get out of here. But I'm like, dude, there are not that many White Sox fans here that are going to recognize you. I mean, really, like, I mean, that you could just tell that there was,
because there's a lot of people there wearing their jerseys. So there's Houston Astros.
Yeah.
I mean, that was from all over. People came from everywhere.
Yeah. So that was
talk about the mix. Obviously, okay, the hoi polloi in the bleachers, who you probably weren't even allowed to look at. Okay, fine, forget on the Steinbrenners, whatever. But I mean, so you're saying that it really wasn't just breaking down to Yankees jerseys and Sox jerseys, but there was a pretty good mix, and you could tell this was sort of a national event. The national event it was.
Oh yeah, there's somebody from Minnesota that was there. People were wearing their home jerseys too,
so it was around, and where we were sitting, we were sitting around people from Los Angeles, Detroit, Minnesota, New York. I mean, it was like this like little eclectic part of America all coming together, and you'd be like, so if you're a Detroit fan, why are you here? Well, this is a one of a kind, event in history. And I felt I love baseball and I need to be here. And so that I think was a cool experience too, because it just wasn't Sox and Yankees fans. It was people who truly, truly loved the sport of baseball, or had a, affinity to the movie and baseball. And so that I think made the experience more unique than just like a playoff game or something like that.
Well, then the people sitting next to us, they were from California, and it was 4 guys walk in, and it's 90 degrees,
so hot,
high humidity, and they walk in jeans and a kind of a nice short sleeve shirt and cowboy boots. And they sit next to us. I'm thinking, you guys are going to roast. But luckily, the kind of little bit of cloud cover before the game. I said, oh, where are you from? They're like, oh, we're California. He goes, I just flew my plane in and landed it over here for the game today. And
wow.
I'm just like, okay.
I'm like, how did you get the cheap seats if you have your own plane?
Yeah, really.
They didn't look like baseball fans.
No, they looked like people who were definitely there for the experience.
Oh, wow. Huh. Go figure. Go Iowa. Boy.
And then the whole opening was really neat.
Yeah, that was like, so, I mean, I had so many people like when I came home that were like, oh my gosh, I was watching on TV. And when, Kevin Costner came out and then the players came out of the corn, like, it was just such a cool moment. And I was like, yeah, being there in person was just, I mean, I'm talking about, I'm getting goosebumps because it was just, I don't know. It just took me back to being a kid and like why I loved baseball and like why it's such a part of like who I am. And then being able to attach it to the movie that you watched as a kid, then attaching it to the White Sox. I mean, it had so many elements to it. And then it's Kevin Costner is super famous. You're just like, it says so many cool things to it. Yeah. That opening sequence, they could not have scripted it better. So whoever came up with that, I mean, I don't like to give kudos to MLB people too often, but they deserve, or if it was Hollywood people or whoever did it, it was incredible how they
and the way they had the design of the fences in the outfield to blend in, the corn.
It's so fun story about the corn though that we found out was so they grew specific corn to be in the outfield, And what was it, like a week before or something, the game, a huge storm came through and it blew all the corn over. So they literally had to come in and prop the corn up with these like green like rods. So if you went out to the outfield, it was like real corn, but it was kind of like fake dead corn that was propped
They had it
up.
strapped to the poles.
That Hollywood corn showing up in Iowa. Get out of here. So, okay, then, so the kudos to MLB extends to the fact that really there wasn't anything that was odd in terms of like, glitches or delays. It was just like a super romantic, normal game.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was no
they did the national anthem, and right after the national anthem, they had the flyover with the Blue Angels, and I thought it was different because usually I think when they fly over a game, you have a big stadium, so they're pretty high up. When they flew over, it was right over the top of us. It was like, wow, I've never seen it that low before, right over the top.
Yeah.
Wow.
And everybody was just like in awe, like didn't know what to do when that happened. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah. So no, it really did. It went off without a hitch. Like they could not have possibly scripted it any better, I don't think.
Capping off the romance of pregame, the military fighting jets, like we all grew up waiting for at ball games. Hey, on that note, let's take a break. We're going to get into, how the game went and probably talk about, I don't know. I think they shot a movie somewhere around there that had something to do with the game, and maybe sort of where this game ranks for both Shaun and Melissa. We will talk about all that stuff. Oh my God, a ton of stuff on the Dish Deluxe number 4 when we come back in a minute. Hang with us. We promise we'll be back. We'll let you know how this game ends in just a minute. White Sox fans, my name is Brett Ballantini. I am hosting a history podcast called The Dish Deluxe on the Fans First Sports Network. I have little purpose here other than to wear this super groovy, super cool hat representing Iowa. Tells you how much I know about Iowa. I'm representing Iowa with my hat because I can't represent it with stories about a cool game that happened 2 years ago today because I wasn't there. I am not hoi polloi enough to sit in the bleachers at the Field of Dreams game, even for that second game, who nobody really cared about. It was something like the Cubs and the Cardinals, or I don't know, some other teams played the next year. I didn't even get to go to that one. Forget the really cool marquee one. I didn't even get to draft behind the Steinbrenners because they would have me arrested. Anyhow, I'm lucky enough to have two folks, one of whom you know very well from Southside Sox, and let's face it, you're pretty much getting to know her husband as well, because Shaun now he's a staple of our podcast as well. Shaun Bollenbach and Melissa Sage-Bollenbach, both who were at the game, made the journey. We've already talked about getting out there, fighting for souvenirs, ended up just coming away with a Yohan Moncada jersey. All right. Rubbing elbows with Ron Kittle and then running away. Grabbing the super groovy ball caps, which is perfectly neutral, a very appropriate choice for a fan of, say, neither of the teams. You were not able to be convinced on that long trip out to Iowa to somehow change your stripes to the White Sox, Shaun. But this game, I didn't even read up on enough to recall. I did watch it. The White Sox, I want to say, were in fair command of this game, but then things took a turn, and I think Aaron Judge was involved, but the White Sox wanted to blow this game, and then they didn't. So talk to me, at least Melissa first, the panoply of emotions you're going through, especially as this game wears on, and it looks like what you thought was going to carry you home late at night in post-game happiness, maybe was going to turn real sour. Talk to me about the travails of the game.
Yeah, so obviously, it started out really well. José Abreu hit the first ever Major League home run in the state of Iowa. And Eloy also had a home run. And so Lance Lynn was doing really well. And so the offense was clicking on all cylinders. And I was just like, yeah, this is great. And the Yankees fans all around us are just like pissing and moaning. They were so mad. And, Eloy, the one Yankee fan in front of us, he pointed at Eloy and he was like, man, I wish we could have one of those on the Yankees. It was just so like, Yankee fan like is envious of me, a White Sox fan, you know? So that was like a super memorable moment. And and Michael Kopech, like that, like to me is one of his like moments of his career. I hope it stands out for him because it stood out for me too. Like he was so pumped up and he came out and he was just his fastball looked awesome. And I remember Shaun was like, who's this guy? He had not seen Michael before. And I was like, yeah, it's like, it's about time, you know? And I kind of went through his story and things like that. So it was like, I don't know. As a White Sox fan, I was just like, this is going too well.
Plus Eloy and Luis Roberts in the outfield, since we're sitting in left field.
Yeah.
They were having a great time. I mean, Eloy was just doing some funny stuff out there. He was like playing with the fans. And I think everybody knew our left field was, I'm going to say, more normal people compared to behind. They would throw the baseballs over. They started just throwing them in our outfield.
Yeah.
And then Eloy would always motion our outfield.
He would like try to get everybody
the crowd
pump up,
stirred
and then he'd fake throw and then he'd throw. And so it was just, it was like one of those moments you're like, I don't know, this just seems too good to be true. Like it really does, but I'm going to love it because it is really just, And then,
but you know how they play catch or warm-ups before innings and then they throw the ball into the stands? Well, Roberts and Eloy are playing catch, and then when the inning would end, instead of Eloy throwing it, he's the closest one. He'd have Roberts throw it from center field into the stands.
I mean, his arm just a bullet. And you're
used to in the stands when a ball comes up, let's say for a foul ball, you have like 2 or 3 kids with gloves, and then you have everybody else. Well, it's basically all adults, and everybody can't go back to the car with their glove because they just got to play catch. They all have gloves on, so 80% of adults with gloves are going for the ball. I mean, we'll never see this anywhere. This is just so bizarre.
Yeah. God, it is odd.
And then, of course, so the 9th inning rolls along and Liam comes in. You're like, this is done. This is a done deal. Like if there was anybody made for this moment, it was Liam Hendricks, right? Oh,
yeah.
And then
he gave up the first home run, and I think were you still okay up to the first home
run?
run?
Well, yeah, because they were still leading.
I know, but were you getting nervous after that?
Well, yeah, I mean, anytime that the Yankees start hitting home runs in the 9th inning, you're like, this could get ugly really quickly. And it was Stanton and Judge, you know, they had the big boppers in their lineup coming up, and I was just like, oh no, here we go. And like, you just knew he didn't have it because it was like, boom. And the Yankees fans, you know, they're turning around. They're like, you know, giving us crap. And then, I was like pouting and.
Well, no, they hit the go ahead home run. He's rounding the bases and Melissa turns to me and says, this whole day is ruined. It wasn't even worth it. I wish I wouldn't have come. And I said, Melissa, you just saying how you're having the best time, and now it's all ruined because of the one home run.
Yes, it was all ruined. Like you cannot have the perfect day and then they blow it at the end.
Yeah, they blow it.
Like that would have just been awful. And so Shaun's like, don't say that. You know, you have the top of the lineup coming up in the next inning. You know, Tim Anderson, just don't give up. And I was just like. I was having no part of it. I was so mad.
So for a brief moment, Shaun was perhaps just like 0.02 more of a White Sox fan than you, Melissa. But I don't blame you because even when things were going well, you were like, well, I'm waiting for the other shoe. So, I mean, when things are going well and you're just thinking this is going too well, yeah, I mean, you know, not to say you comically brought it on, but I mean, yeah, you weren't shocked as much as you might have been pouting. Okay, so step us through then the best part of the game.
So yeah, I mean, Sebby walks and Shaun looks at me and he's like, Tim Anderson's gonna walk this off. And I was like, there's no way. I'm like, there's just no way.
Well, he was swinging the bat pretty good all night.
I mean, well, yeah, in 2021 he was incredible.
Well, I mean,
too.
in that game though he was.
And yeah, so you know, so Sebby works the walk, and you're like, okay, this has been movie magic, maybe. And
well, the balls were flying out of the park.
Yes, they were. Yeah, I mean, I should have done my research before we did this podcast, but I mean, how many home runs? Like I said, I know for sure you had Abreu and Eloy and TA, and then I know Judge and Stanton.
I think the catcher for the White Sox had a home run too.
So there was lots of home runs in the game, but and then TA, the crack of the bat, and you just knew, like the minute
and the
he
crowd
hit it,
just went nuts. Even though it was only 8,000, it seemed like a lot.
Yeah, and nobody left. Like
where are you gonna go?
Right. Had it have been a regular game, playoff game on either side, either the Cubs or the Sox fans or the Yankees fans would have left, And
Melissa, you'd have been like, hey, can we go? Yeah, come on. Yeah, jeez.
But because there's so many fans who are just there for the experience, everybody was still super locked in. And so when TA hit that home run, it was for 8,000 people. You would have thought it was 50,000 people. It was nuts. People just cheering and stomping and screaming. And it was, and then I just wouldn't leave. I'm like, it's over, and like the game's over, and like people are leaving.
Well, they
and
did
I'm
do fireworks.
Yeah, they did a fireworks thing after a little fireworks show after the game, but like I didn't want to leave. I'm like, I don't want to leave this. This was like,
you're talking about not leaving. So we're sitting in left field. So to the right, you can see the cornfields and the parking lot. And I remember even the one person from New York, I heard him say, "Is that a cow out there? I've never seen a cow before." But at nighttime, you were talking about those cars in the movie coming in to see. You could start seeing the cars exit the parking lot, and it was slowly cars. Way. So before we left for 20 minutes, it's just constantly these cars, one after just another, like going. So then we get in our car and we left. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but we went ahead. But then you go through these two lanes, and finally you get to the small town before you get on the highway. And when you get to the small town, it's all these people standing outside the local bar, the local restaurant,
waving at you.
Waving. And I'm thinking, there's cars that have been going for like 45 minutes ahead of us in a slow, steady line. How long have they been standing out here, and how long are they going to stand? So it's just kind of interesting how that worked.
Yeah, but it was one of those moments in life that you just didn't want to end. Like I didn't want to leave. I just kept standing there in the bleachers, like staring out. And I think Shaun's finally like we gotta go. Like,
well, you did get your picture taken with every White Sox cutout.
Then on the way out, I was like taking my picture with all the cutouts and just trying to savor every moment because you knew it was like special and never.
And plus you knew you had a 4-hour drive home ahead of you. So I don't know. I'd want to try to like just bunk and sleep there that night too.
We probably should have slept in our cars.
So on the parade route home or two, how often did you pull out like the Queen wave? Where did you actually, play the role of a Steinbrenners wife or anything?
We honked our horn a few times and I had my shirt on. So I'm like, it was really fun.
So I have to, inject, of course, because, I'm not an unbiased host here, in case that shocks anyone who's listened to any of the 375 podcasts we've done here with Southside Sox. But Shaun, I got to say, I mean, in addition to the fact you're like 0.2%, more a White Sox fan heading into the bottom of the ninth than even your wife. Plus, then you predict the winning home run. I mean,
he did.
The door's wide open for you. I mean, I know it's not a popular time to make the move. It's in fact a really terrible time to make the move, but we're here for you. I mean, I'm just getting a sense that, you've got a little bit of it in you. So just think about it. Don't need an answer now, but just think about it.
You can always add
well, sometimes Melissa says I'm too positive. So I don't know. It didn't work earlier this year. Was it last year? We went to a White Sox game and they were down by 4 or 5 and Melissa and Sage were our son was ready to pack it in. I said, they could come back. I think they'll come back. And that prediction did not work.
No, that probably often does not with the White Sox, but you couldn't have made a better and more timely prediction, especially given the way it played out. And I'm sure there are probably 80,000 people claiming they were there predicting that shot, but you can actually legitimately say that. And I'm guessing there weren't a ton who said that, especially because, the hoi-polloi and the bleachers, they didn't even necessarily know who was playing the game. Okay. How this game ranks. You've both seen playoff games. Obviously, Shaun, you just got to sort of play along here because I know this isn't your team yet. So, I mean, I get that, you're like, all right, well, let's let the White Sox people get excited. But, really clearly unique. But, I mean, in terms of how it ranks for both of you, just as a memory of a Major League Baseball game and the way it ended and all of that, it's got to rank pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to playoff games and spring training games and the WBC, and I mean, you name it. For me, it ranks even above the 2005 division game that I went to, or in the 2021, the only game we won. It's just because of all the elements that were part of it that you just can never replicate in any other type of atmosphere. So so I can't imagine it being knocked out, but maybe if I actually get to go to a World Series game maybe
sounds like a challenge, White Sox. Sounds like a challenge. All right, she's throwing down. Melissa Sage-Bollenbach on our airwaves, throwing down. Get to the World Series so I can supplant the Field of Dreams game, that silly Field of Dreams game, in my heart. Shaun, again, now you got to be sort of the passive, neutral observer here. Although I'm sure you're getting pulled a little bit by the ear in the Sox direction, of course. But I mean, just obviously as a spectacle, it still had to rank real high for you.
Oh yeah, it was one of the. I mean, just the experience of everything, and then the way the game played out. I mean, you couldn't beat a better opening game for, I mean, even the MLB to do the Field of Dreams there. I mean, that was just the way he had it all set up. That's definitely probably our ones. When people say, what's your favorite stadium? I always say that game, even though Melissa always says that doesn't count. But I always say that game, and that stadium was probably the best with everything. Yeah, definitely.
Because it definitely took you back to took you back in time, and how
maybe because you also knew you're one of the couple people that got to experience it.
That
made it even better.
A little bit of like, haha, I'm one of only 8,000 people.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you sound, well, it can, I'll say me, it makes me sound grumpy when I'm not saying I'm not, but when you extol the virtues of Comiskey Park, for example, oh, well, of course it's old, or it's the other park, so of course it's better, or, whatever. And how many wins do you even see in that park, you idiot? Why are you playing it up? And I mean, this might even apply, although lucky Shaun can still go to the stadium he went to as a kid and didn't have ownership. As hideous as ownership has been over the years for the Chicago Cubs, hasn't had the idea to tear it down, and it was literally crumbling. So he still does get to have that experience, although I would argue that while maybe it's a better, Wrigley is maybe a better overall experience for fans, in what I would call the mollification. But I mean, obviously there is a lot being done to drum up, to change the tenor of the neighborhood to a degree, at least right on the park. So even that's changed. And I'm not saying that, Shaun, you're supposed to be wistful for, 1981 when there were only 550 fans, in a April game that you went to or something. I know that can be a little silly, but there is something to be said for that intimacy that you obviously you two got to experience in the extreme, but the intimacy of a Comiskey Park. I didn't mean to taunt Sage in our last podcast and saying that, the front row seat in the upper deck of the new ballpark is farther from the field than the last row in the old Comiskey, or in the original Comiskey Park was. I mean, the fact that you're on top of it, Tiger Stadium, Wrigley Field, I mean, they haven't changed the innards of the park. You still have that intimacy. You still have some obstructive views as well, but I mean, you still have that intimacy. And there's something to be said, because it's rare you see a park like that. Pittsburgh's got one, I'd argue, that is sort of built probably just with practicality in mind, but and people rave about it. People adore that intimate experience. So there is something to be said about it standing out as perhaps, maybe in a way your favorite park, Shaun, because I mean, you're seeing the best in the world, and you're close enough to, to wave to a lawyer, to, get to spray a sweater, to tug on, Kevin Costner's shirt tail or whatever. And, you're just not going to get that in the major leagues, anywhere. So it should stand out.
And I think that intimacy part is some of what has been lost over the years in baseball, with the modernization of everything and making things fan friendly and making things convenient and stuff like that. So that experience brought that back for me for baseball, and it just brought up all those old feelings of like, this is why I love baseball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can mix and match any of the stadiums from the new Sox, parks era, and they're all the same. White Sox Park, it's a great park. But it's not that kind of park. You're still you're stuck in a place that, again, we use a weird term like mall or whatever, but it's a different way to see a game. It's not those stupid circle bowls where you played football and baseball that were all the trend in the 60s and 70s. But it's not Wrigley Field. I'll admit that it's not Wrigley Field, and we can devote a whole podcast to dog on a Wrigley Field. But one thing you can't dog on it about is the fact that you're right. You're there. It's pretty hard to have a bad seat in that park. And that's something that's sort of lost. I'd argue that even PNC in Pittsburgh, there probably are some seats that are, not quite equivalent to maybe the Fenways and the Wrigleys of the world. So that is something that's lost. And it does seem like it's probably not going to come back aside from, once a year in Iowa. I guess.
Probably in the more games they play in Iowa, maybe to lose its luster a little bit. Because
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
But still, it's going to always have a special place.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, it'll be
fun to watch.
Yeah,
to see the first major league game there.
And they really did involve the Iowans in it, which was also another cool part. Like the people working, like the parking lots and everything. They were all people who lived there, and they were so excited about it too. So that was like, I don't know, it had more small town intimacy feel too. You're like, these are like their neighbors, and they're like working together and selling hot dogs. I don't know, that was something that obviously you don't see when you go to a big.
You really didn't see anybody get upset the whole time.
No, it was just not like
in a good mood.
Yeah.
Well, aside from your wife,
Aside from yes.
The lucky thing is nobody likes the Yankees, so all those people that were wearing those other uniforms, they were all rooting for the White Sox.
Oh yeah. How weird must it have been for you, Melissa, to be around presumably Detroit Tigers fans and Twins fans, and you're all sort of like, okay, hey, for a game, let's join hands, because we don't want those idiots to win.
The Yankees,
yeah, it's always easy to root against the evil empire. All right, well, let's wind this up talking a little bit about we're going to talk about the movie Field of Dreams. So for those of you very strange people out there who, again, no offense, Melissa, who prefer Major League or some other weird baseball movie and just want to diss Field of Dreams, this is the time where we'll say goodbye, because you don't need to listen anymore, because it's just going to agitate you by talking about Field of Dreams. I don't even presume that my two wonderful guests here are big fans of the movie. We'll find that out here in a second, but just giving you a heads up, we're going to just be talking about Field of Dreams movie now. So if you just can't take it, thank you for listening. We'll have number 5 coming up real soon. And if we could somehow break this into a Patreon special or a bonus track, we'd be doing it right now, but we can't do that. So if you're in your car and you're stuck in traffic, you can't even reach over to turn the radio off. Sorry, you're just gonna have to listen to this, because we're going to talk about Field of Dreams. And I'd just like to know from both of you going in, this is the reason why there was a game in Iowa. Obviously, people paid by MLB to stand by the road for 8 hours waving at cars by, that wasn't the reason, that's super sweet and romantic. So your thoughts about the movie and maybe your history with the movie to begin with.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I don't know. We love the movie, I would say. So I don't know, just the whole thing, the story, the experience, the ending. And then I even heard, with the people say, what's your favorite part of the movie? And I remember hearing some of the major leaguers at the end talking about their favorite part was the ending. And it was always kind of related to their dad. And I could really relate to that, especially now that he's passed away. You think back to playing catch all that time, and it does bring that back. So you watch the movie, then it even tugs at your heart a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching it when it first came out, and then in the early 90s, I worked in a video store through college, and that was one of the movies that we would always put up, because there were a couple of us who were big baseball people, and it's just, I don't know. Obviously for me, it's the connection to the White Sox that I always thought was so cool, because I am a fan of 8 Men Out too, so that whole Black Sox thing to me is just an interesting part of baseball and American history. And so it has all the pieces for me. So it has the family part that you can connect to with the, Kevin Costner and his dad and his, daughter and wife and all of that part of it. And then the White Sox history part of it. And so it just has all the feel good things that you want in a movie, and it's from the was it 1989 or 1990?
Yeah, it's late
89, 89,
so.
I think. And so
everything's better from then. Come on, that's a no-brainer.
It is. And so I just think that it has all the cool pieces, and it's in the middle of nowhere, Midwest, being a Midwesterner all my life. Like, I don't know, to me, it can't be beat. It's just awesome.
Did you both see it first you both saw it younger? Did you both see it in a movie theater for the first time, or what was your first experience with the movie?
Mine was VHS.
No?
VHS,
sure, there you go.
Yep. Nope. That was me too. I didn't see it in the movie theater. I saw it once it came out on VHS, but and it is one of those movies that stands the test of time too, because our kids both knew, we were going to the game and stuff. And back then, our daughter isn't into baseball at all. And Sage was kind of just starting to get into baseball. And so they watched the game while we were at the game. And like when we came back, then they both watched the movie and they both really liked the movie, and so being, kids, teenagers now, all these years later, and they really liked the movie. So I think when you got a movie that can kind of stand the test of time like that makes it cool too.
Yeah, it's interesting that the folks who, and listen, there's legitimate criticism. I mean, it's not a perfect movie. Okay, whatever, fine. But I mean, some of the criticism being, the fantasy and the inability to really certain people are impervious to the fact that it's tugging at their heartstrings. And I don't know if that is 100% sample of people who haven't, say, played catch with a parent, or haven't even maybe bonded over the sport, with a parent. And those people exist. I assume they do exist. That's not my case. I saw my dad in a movie theater. I was, whatever, 20 or something. So I mean, I'm tearing up. You're not supposed to do that, but I mean, it resonates with the fact you've had that connection, and the game is passed down to you. White Sox fandom has passed down to you, which is very something I'm a little resentful about at the moment, Dad. But if you have had that experience, I think it's hard to be immune to the charms and the power of the movie, because I mean, it strikes that in a way that I'm not sure many ever have. Certainly not with baseball, I don't think, striking that directly. I mean, it really does, punch in the throat and hit you in the heart, because, well, I mean, that's what the sport's about. I mean, you're doing it, even your family and Sage, sort of picking up the game. And I'm sure in both of your cases, you had inherited to some degree from a relative, not a parent. So, I mean, that's sort of how this is handed down as well. And I mean, that for all the, whatever, the corniness or the Hollywood of it, or all how they changed it from the novel, et cetera, I mean, that part still is there, and it does resonate. And I'm not sure, unless maybe you are completely devoid of that experience, how you can ignore that.
Agree. Definitely.
Okay.
And look at my monologue. Look at my cool Field of Dreams cereal box. Isn't that cool? It's got Dwyer Brown there on
so if you actually eat that for breakfast, can you walk into the cornfield and like play with Ty Cobb?
I know. I don't know. I didn't open it though, because I want to keep it forever.
Wow. Hey, who knew that product existed? And again, if maybe if you're ever like, okay, I got to see where James Earl Jones went. Then maybe you just got to sit down. Maybe the whole family just has to have the breakfast cereal, drive out to Iowa and see if you can walk in the cornfield.
Yeah, and on the back it has the whole like little maze where you can go through the house.
It's where you go after you eat the cereal. It's like, this is where you go, and you get to play with Joe Jackson. Sure.
I would recommend people to go to the Field.
So that is, if
we had a great time the year before we went before the game, and it was a great time.
Yeah, because they have done so much to preserve how the house was and the field was during the movie. And the people that give you the tour and things, like, they are so knowledgeable on it. And again, they live there, so they tell you all about,
especially if you're into the movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, it's a super cool experience. So if you are live within, a couple handful of driving hours and you're a big baseball person, it's definitely a bucket list worthy thing to do.
The plus, I'm just guessing here, but the plus side of the actual tangible experience is you do not have to go through the daughter choking on a hot dog and having to have a Moonlight Graham come and save you. But unfortunately, the negative side is we're still back in a book burning era. So how about that? Movie resonance from 30 years ago. How about that? Bet you didn't think we'd be here, people, but yes, we are. Anyway. All right. Well, the Field of Dreams experience. Does it feel like it was just 2 years ago? I know as a White Sox fan, I can speak for Melissa. It does not feel like it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It feels like a long time ago.
It feels like a long time ago. Cause I think like just with being through the COVID year, cause COVID was over, but it was still
sort of not. Yeah, sure.
And yeah, so it feels like a lifetime ago. Like,
it was odd. We did not see one mask.
No, there was no masks. Nobody cared about masks. It was out. Everything was outside though. So, I mean, back then there's no need for
if
that.
I were the Iowa people, I'd be wearing masks saying, boy, these New Yorkers coming in here. Oh, I don't not know what they are bringing, but yeah, interesting. Yeah.
And then I had to stand in line to get my TA stock off bobblehead when they gave those away.
Oh, at one of them.
Yeah, last year, Sage and I, we made sure we went nice and early because, I mean, it's iconic. So
well, and at this point, what else they going to sell you? I'm going to guess we're going to have giveaways next year and the year after and the year after because it might be a little parts. A totally different podcast, which I'm sure we'll be having all off season and even at the end of this season. But it is a different podcast because this was a happy moment, one of the final ones in recent White Sox history, and that is sort of sad. But and the movie itself was melancholy, so maybe it's appropriate to end on a somewhat sad note as one of our teams is on the rise and then me and Melissa's is flatlined. Anyhow, well, hey, listen, glad you listened, everyone. And maybe you'll be listening more to the history podcast because by and large, we'll be talking about good moments. I don't think it's going to exclusively be that. I know Mark Liptak, my cohort in the history writing, was pushing for white flag trade. I said, I don't think this year we need to talk about the white flag trade. Let's just keep that for a time where we're a little bit happier, because we do not need to kick all of us while we're down. But appreciate everybody out there listening and pay attention to this and making this something that's popular enough to keep doing. We will continue to do them throughout the off season. Who knows? There might even be a little daily dose of history once, off season comes and your faithful host here can breathe and maybe sleep a little bit more again. We'll see if that happens. It may or may not. But anyhow, on behalf of Shaun Bollenbach and Melissa Sage-Bollenbach, hey, both of you, thank you for doing this with me. I wanted to make it a priority. I knew it was coming up, and I thought, hey, I got two people right in the back pocket, and there ain't many of them. I don't know how many people are claiming it, but there aren't many. There aren't many people who have the legit tickets and the legit photographs and all the evidence.
Like you said, right? Everybody claims they were there, though, right?
Right. So those 800,000 thought you're like, hey, we can see through you. And plus, we got a couple of people who can vouch. They'll barcode scan you something. They'll know. They'll sniff you out whether or not you're there. So be careful. Don't be too chippy at the ballpark. Thanks, Shaun. Thanks, Melissa, for doing this. Thanks, everybody, for listening and watching. And we'll have more history coming up. I don't know. What is hanging around the corner? Oh, I don't know. We might be talking about a no-hitter. That's coming up. We've got some division clinching. We've got some playoffs coming. So there are actually plenty of happy memories to talk about. Once those are extinguished in a couple more months, I guess we'll talk about bad White Sox history, or maybe we'll just retire the podcast, whatever. But hopefully we'll have Shaun back for something. We'll figure out some way to get him back on here. We'll yell at the Cubs and we'll invite him back on. He'll wear his jersey or something. And Melissa, I don't know. You'll see her like tomorrow on the next podcast. So anyhow, thanks everybody for watching and listening. And we'll get back to you with more history real soon.